So we're here at Ask Anything, and we're going to be talking about how to turn a guest into a member and what is the phrasing that we need to use when we're speaking to guests and trying to do that pitch. So I'm happy to introduce two people who are very good at doing this. And we have past International President Pat Johnson, and we have Distinguished Toastmaster Suzanne Rieger. And so we're just going to have a dialogue and see where it takes us. And hopefully we'll be able to share this for those people who don't make it here today. So let's talk about how do you get that member to sign up? Let's start with Pat.
Oh, well, I think this is a huge topic and one that's very interesting. I think the first thing we have to keep in mind is that everybody comes to Toastmasters for slightly different reasons. And so I'm always curious right away of what brought them to the meeting, if they've been to a meeting before, what they're looking for, because I don't think that I can pitch them a Toastmasters benefits if I don't know what they're looking for. I might be totally off the mark. So I think the first goal is to be very curious about them. So I like to ask questions. As soon as I get a referral, the first thing I do is reach out, and usually I often just get an email address. Sometimes I get a phone number. If I get a phone number, I will phone. If not an answer, then I leave a message and follow up with an email, and I introduce myself and ask if I can set up a Zoom call with them or a phone call, depending on where they are. And I ask to do that in the next day or two. And then I have a conversation with them to find out about what they're looking at, what their experiences are. And then start to talk about the Toastmasters program. I think one of the things that's really important for me is, from my perspective, is to understand that I know clubs in the past have had the practice of inviting people back and not asking them for the sale. I do not do that. And I have never done that, because I was one of those members that the first meeting I went to was the very hardest meeting I ever went to in my entire life. And if they wouldn't have asked me to join that first time I went, I would never have gone back again, because I was so full of doubt and lack of confidence that I had every reason why they wouldn't want me to be in their group. Maybe I wasn't smart enough. Maybe I didn't fit in. Maybe they didn't like me. Maybe this was the wrong place and wasn't a good fit. Maybe they couldn't help me. Maybe I couldn't afford it. Like, I had every objection that was running around in my head of why I wouldn't fit in, or this wouldn't be for me. And the fact that they said that very first night that I went to my first meeting, "Would you be interested in joining our club?" told me that now it was my choice, that they had invited me. And what I know nowadays from the vast majority of people that I talk to that are interested in coming as guests and looking at Toastmasters, they have already researched. I don't talk to anybody that says, "Well, I'm looking to find out what Toastmasters is all about." They're going, "Well, I'm looking to see if this is what I need." But they've watched meetings on YouTube, they've Googled it, they've been on websites, they've read information. Just type in Toastmasters and see your screen fill up with news and articles and expressions from members. So these people know, they're informed when they show up. And I think that that's really important for us when we're wanting to convert guests to members, is that we realize they've already researched. They're not coming to see what do we do. They might be looking at how do we do it more. So I think that, and they may not phrase it that way, but my experience is that they're quite informed. So I'm curious of what they already know. And then just talking about, one of the things that I've found that causes conversation is when I talk about the demographics within our club. It's not so much the program because they know that, but talking about the mixture of people there are in our clubs, because I think people are looking for, first of all, a safe place, but also a place where they can relate. And so when they hear that, well, we have a wide variety of ages and backgrounds and occupational groups in our group, I think that makes it also attractive for them to relate to. So those are some of the basic things before I get started. And so I'll leave it at that and give Suzanne a chance to contribute.
Thanks very much, Pat. So what you're really saying then is that because they've done a lot of research, they're more than just a warm lead. They're a hot lead. That they've come inquiring, and it's up to us to make the sale.
Yeah, I don't think people come to kick tires anymore. Perhaps depending on how they come, I think some people on Meetup maybe come differently without having done as much research, but for the most part, people are pretty informed. And again, based on what demographic, like people say, oh, older people aren't savvy. Yeah, they are. They've all got grandchildren and great grandchildren, and they're connected because their families are around the world now. We don't live in a world where our kids and our grandkids and our grandparents live down the road within 10 miles of a cart ride. We live in a global world where everybody's someplace else. So I think that we sometimes in Toastmasters get this mindset and we hold on to it for 50 years, and you have to go, hey, this is out of date. Like, get over it, stop it, move with the times, because I think we do ourselves a disservice also. So, yeah.
Thanks, Pat. Suzanne, how is it that you close the sale when you're in your club? I know you have just the right things to say and that you are so motivating. So let's talk about how you deal with guests when they come to your club.
I think the most important thing is, as Pat struck on it, you need to find out the things that kind of make them tick. And that can only be done by asking questions about themselves. If you build trust with somebody and you make sure they sit with a member that is going to explain things as they go along, and you take that break to say, hey, how'd it go? I think a lot of it does the work for yourself. I think the motivation comes from if it's a quality meeting. And I think if we don't have a quality meeting, it doesn't even matter how many guests you have in there. If you don't have a quality meeting, none of this matters, unfortunately. But when you have somebody that's been exposed to a great meeting, again, like Pat said, you got to find out why are they there. And once I find out why they're there, then I hit on the hot buttons of why they're there. And I talk about how it changed for me and what I experienced. And then maybe talk, if I find somebody that's got something in common in the club that they might have experienced or going to experience something similar, I would relate that to that person and say, I know exactly what you're talking about, because this person over here walked through the door and this happened to them. And look where they are now. And we also talk about the diversity, because we've got some clubs where we have people who have challenges. And some people see them now and go, but I go, you have no idea how far that person has come. So if somebody like this can come that far in that short a period of time with the encouragement of the people and the members that are here, can you only imagine how far you will come? And so it's always about being uplifting, finding their hot buttons. I don't talk about necessarily, I talk about what it's going to do for them, because that's anything. If you have to create features and benefits. It's how you do a sale. You feature what's going on, you talk about the benefits, and then you close. That is A plus B equals C. That is sales 101. I don't care if you're in Toastmasters, if you're selling an RVs, Avon, I don't care. The whole idea is feature, benefit, and then close, because you're always closing. A, B, C, always be closing. And that happens to us in Toastmasters. From the minute that they walk through the door, they need to have a good experience. Yeah. If they don't have a good experience starting at A, and B and C will not matter. I mean, it's hard to turn around a first impression. So you have to make sure that I'm always like, hey, welcome. Hey, where are you from? I'm always upbeat. I always keep my energy up, and I'm down when I need to be down. But I think the most important thing is they see an energetic, fun place to join. That is, like Pat said, safe. And that's one thing I talked about with myself is I always tell my story. Look, it took me from April 2017 to September 2017 to join a meeting because I was not confident in what it was. I knew what I wanted to do, but I just didn't take that first step. But when I walked through the doors, first thing I felt was comfortable because they encouraged me to come in. I got to be part of the meeting. And when I left that night, I knew when they asked me, do you want to join Toastmasters? That was the place I wanted to be. And I always say, look, I'm a confident person. So I can imagine somebody walking through the door that doesn't have the confidence that maybe I do. So I get it. But we're going to get you a mentor when you become a member. We're going to make sure that we step you through everything you need to know. This is the place to be if you want to get A plus B plus C done, whatever they want to do, right? There's always a way to turn around what it is they want to do so that Toastmasters can be beneficial for them. Because honestly, Toastmasters is beneficial for every part of our lives. I mean, I think we all know that as we've gone through Toastmasters. My life has changed both professionally and personally. So it's easy for me to sell. You can always sell when you've had a good experience. You can even sell the bad experiences too, if you turn it around. But I think most importantly, she hit on it. It's you find out ask them questions. This is how you know what it is they need. And then you feature benefit towards those questions and what they want to do. And that's the most important thing in getting to close the deal. But
I think,
if you don't have a quality meeting, it doesn't matter. So that's the first step.
yeah, I think what Suzanne said in terms of quality meeting is so critical. When clubs are struggling and they're desperate for guests and people walk in, I've heard members say, oh, great, we've got somebody else that can serve on the executive. Do you want to be part? And I'm going, how dare you? These people come looking for an education program and you're now making them responsible for the program that they want to buy. Stop it. Stop it. But I've actually seen that and heard it. And when I worked with a club years ago, that was one of the things that they were doing because they were down in membership. And I was there, in fact, when a fellow walked in and he started talking about who he was. He was quite outgoing and talking about his experience and everything. And they said, oh, you're perfect. You'll make a great treasurer. Yeah. What? Well, guess what?
Welcome. Now you get to go to work.
Yeah, exactly. And he's walking in looking at getting something for himself, and they're already asking him, not just for money, but also his time to run something he knows nothing about. Wow. So I think that, it's like desperation in anything. If you're desperate for a job, you're pushing away from you. You're pushing away relationships. If you're desperate for a friend, people are pushing you away, going, go away, you're creepy. We have to be we have to know about the human relationships regardless of what we're doing. So yeah,
I would agree with Pat on that one. And again, I mean, just because I've done a lot of sales in my life, people can smell desperation a mile away.
Yeah,
stick to the basics. That's it. Stick to the basics. Welcome, enjoy the meeting. Maybe they're not even the right fit. So it doesn't matter. Just make sure their experience is good. Find out why they're there. Just keep it where it's supposed to be. That's it. If it's meant to be, they'll be a member.
Yeah,
if you ask
I agree.
them to.
Yeah.
I have a story of my mentor. He started to go to a club and he attended many, many meetings, 3 months worth, and he absolutely loved it. And every time he went, he was well received. He enjoyed it. And finally, somebody came up to him one day and said, you've come to see us several times over 3 months. How come you haven't joined? And he said, nobody asked me. That member Went on to be a 29-year Toastmaster. He won the Presidential Citation Award for creating Toastmaster Talk, which was a cable station TV program where he brought in guests from all over the world to come and speak. And so there's power in making sure that when a guest walks through our door is that like Pat said, they are a hot lead. We're in a better position now where people can go on the internet. When he joined, that was back in the 70s. He didn't have that, but nobody asked him to join. And I think we have missed opportunities. It's like you're in a car sales lot and someone walks in the door and you say, oh, well, you know, you like our Toyota Camry. Well, why don't you go across the street and check out the Mazda dealership and then come back and see us? No, don't let them leave. You've got to nail them down as soon as they walk in the door. I'm curious, how has anybody else in this room dealt with guests when they've come to their club? Anybody want to chime in? Shaquille?
Oh, thanks, Karen. I agree 98% to what Pat has said and Suzanne has said, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The only difference between what Pat has mentioned is that our sponsoring organization is the Muslim Food Bank, and through their social media and WhatsApp group, the leads that are coming to us are people who have either come recently from different parts of the world, and I've seen that even among the South Asian community, which is my primary social contact, the awareness of what Toastmasters really is, I didn't have it. I thought I was an informed person. I've traveled almost all over the world except Australia, and I thought I knew about everything. And when I got my first invitation for Toastmasters on a WhatsApp group through the food bank, I said, okay, I've heard about it. What do they do? I went there, and like you guys are saying, it was fun. And my favorite part was the table topics. You don't have to do anything, just blab out for 2 minutes and have fun. And you don't even have to be honest about what you're saying. And it was a hoot. I joined. But coming back to recruiting members, and what we're doing now, and one of the reasons why I wanted this position, the only position that I've ever aspired to be, is to be the VP membership, because I was not comfortable with the way things were happening in our club, is I get a lead from the food bank or from anywhere else. I send them an email and I ask them, where are you located? What do you know about Toastmasters? And what are your expectations? The reason I'm asking these 3 questions is because in my desperation, when I reached out, I had friends in the US who'd been there for 50 years, who joined us from Atlanta, Georgia. He brought a very dear friend of his. She joined us. We had 3 members in Ontario. And so we've got to be, I want to know where they are from. And that helps me. And again, to what you had alluded, that once you find out, what is it that they're looking for? What is it that they're looking for? And again, I thought I had nailed everything. But at the last training, the VP membership training, I can't remember the name of the person, but from the Diverse Abilities Club, we talk about in Toastmasters, about public speaking. We talk about leadership development. We talk about all these things. And she raised such a significant point that a lot of people today are lonely. And when you approach them, hey, I mean, they may not have much need for public speaking and career development stuff, but why don't you come and join us and see what we do and how we have fun? And they're getting members, and that struck to me as something brilliant. So that's why I shared it down the notes that we had in the feedback session. But one of the rules that we've made, that I do not, as a rule, ask guests. Now I am prepared to bring my guests because I've got about 9-10 members in my club. Otherwise, 5 members, no matter what you do, it's like passing the hot potato. It's not a quality meeting. And Carlos has supported our club with Toastmasters in our open houses that we've had 2 open houses we did last year. Our next one is February 21st as our 3rd open house. And just so many people together. Guess, even if they're just Toastmasters coming and you have 3, 4, 5, we found that the conversion rate is so much more better. And then after attending the training course by Phyllis last year, I made it a point. I have 10 members. If I get 2 guests, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll still have 10 members. But if I don't ask them, there's no way I can get 11 or 12. And that's why I ask them, look, are you ready? And then I tell them that, look, things are complicated. You might find this. We have this 5-page monster called the application form. You don't have to worry about anything. Page 1 is your name, your address, your email, and your telephone number. Do you remember that? Yeah. And on page 2, all you have to do is sign where it says member applicant. Yeah, Phyllis is doing that for me. And then send it back to me. Your job is done. Forget about it. Oh, and then that gives them some validation that it's not just I become a member, then what? And then when I bring them in that, okay, once you become a member, we have the processes, we have different pathways going. It's not the simplest thing, but one of the things you have assigned to you is a mentor who's going to be working with you for at least 6 months, show you all the ropes, get you to understand. And you say, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I'm finding that when you do this, it's like going back to the Toastmasters promise of service out of the rise. You're trying to serve their needs instead of join me. If I don't get a member, I'm going to be in trouble. You know, like you said, when you become desperate for anything, it doesn't cut it. So one, we are looking at gathering members for our February 21st meeting, and that is going to be an open house and lots of people there. And secondly, ask again. And again, will everybody who attends your meeting join you? No. I've had a guest who came thrice or maybe more, till finally I had to ask him, I said, my friend, is there something I'm not understanding? What are you looking for? He said, oh, I'm looking for a meeting in person. I said, okay, I'm sorry, we're not meeting in person, so I can't help you here. 2 months later, when I'm collaborating with Mary for her club in Surrey Civic, I find the same man there. I said, you signed up here? He said, no. I said, they've given you a fantastic choice. They're doing a hybrid meeting. I'm sometimes on Zoom supporting them. Sometimes I'm in person. I'm here in person. What's preventing you from joining them now? He had no answer. He signed up. So you could ask them, and you're going to push them in a corner out of the comfort zone, give them the whole big picture. What does it mean for them? And like Suzanne, exactly what you said, the feature doesn't sell. You have to convert it, and that can only be done, like Pat, you rightly mentioned, what is their hot button? Once you identify what's in it for them. I had a very senior executive of Amazon Canada at my house for lunch today. And he's brilliant, studied here, everything. And he's not quite sure what is Toastmasters all about and how can it help him in his ahs and ums and stuff. And I told him about our position in the club meetings of the R counter. He was laughing. He said, you're joking. I said, no, we have a person like that. But again, alluding to exactly what you said, that the concept of safety, it's a peer-based program where people are not going to pull you down. Their role responsibility as an evaluator is to help you improve your presentation, your speaking better, so you can become better. And that's where they will do. You did 2 things well. What can you improve so that your next week is better? And that is a constant step-by-step, every week kind of a program. And he said, oh, and he's going to be attending my club. And hopefully on the 21st,
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
No, seriously.
That is fantastic.
No,
thank you, Shakil.
I was going to steal our 2% back because you said 98%. I want to tell you, when I joined Toastmasters, initially, when I heard about Toastmasters in that April, I was at a conference when there was this great motivational speaker, 2 different kinds. I liked them both, but I was drawn more to the one guy. And I said, how do I do what you do? And his words were join Toastmasters. I didn't really have a clue. I did a little bit of research, but not really enough to make myself understand what it was. So when I walked through the door that first time, I was clueless.
Yeah.
So it was the right meeting at the right time with the right people.
You just got to ask them. And, can you win 100%? No. No,
absolutely not.
One other thing that we've done, I'll share with you guys, I don't know how you feel about it, shed some light on it, is we've decided now to have some tough love. You can come as a guest 3 times. Either you tell us what you don't like about us, and we'll try and change, and you become a member. Otherwise, no more freebies. Because if they don't become your... Sorry, Karen?
I was going to say that brings up a very good question, and I'd like to put that back to Pat is, when we talk to our guests and they've shown up to our meetings, how do you talk to them after the meeting? Because I hear a lot of people saying, so what did you think of our meeting? Is there a better way that we can ask questions of them that fleshes out what they need? Pat, can you talk about that?
Well, I think that's quite a courteous conversation that members in the club would have if you're in person or you're just signing off online, and people tend to say, so what did you think? Or if there's feedback at the end of the meeting. But for me, what really works is, and what I care about is following up with that person and saying, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what worked, what you're looking for, what you think is this a good fit? And to have that subsequent call or coffee, ideally, or whatever we can do to get together. Because I also, at that point, want to explain the global organization. Most people see the club and they don't realize that there's a whole back story and support system there for us. They haven't seen the curriculum. They've just seen some people in a room. And depending on how the meeting went, if the speeches were introduced well, and the objectives of those presentations were explained well, etc. So I like to debrief the meeting with that person following, and ideally for me, that's one-on-one, preferred in person. But if it's online, it's online. But yeah, to debrief it. People feel, I find, are overwhelmed and confused, and it reminds me of how overwhelmed and confused I was. So I think to always remember that what's very common and clear for us is very, very not that for a guest. So that's what I love to do. And I find that increases the conversion rate as well when you do the debrief. So I
like that. And I also like in meetings in clubs I've been a member of, where and Suzanne alluded to it, is where when you walk in the door, that somebody couples you with somebody that you sit with, and that person is whispering into your ear a little bit and giving some explanations of what goes on in a meeting. And if you have that fifth portion of the meeting where you go out afterwards and have beverages and snacks afterwards, inviting that guest to come and find out a little bit, and the way that you introduce it is you just say, hey, we always go out afterwards and debrief the meeting. Would you like to join us? And, we meet over here and it's really fun, and, it's no obligation and you don't have to, but, we'd love to have you come and we can tell you more about Toastmasters. And so it's finding that it's the hook. It's right. It's finding that hook that brings them in. Phyllis, sorry, go ahead.
I think too with that, Karen, is that there is that social time some clubs have after the meeting, and I think it's really critical to invite them to that, to be part and to just have that social gathering. But I also think that one-on-one invitation to debrief is important. So they may not say it in front of a group that are having coffee, and sometimes we get together for that social time and somebody's got something burning, or we've got people that want to take all the time, and it's not a time to debrief the meeting. It is purely social. So I think there's purposes, and sometimes they don't work in circumstances and sometimes they do, but I think it's really important to have that one-on-one with them. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks. Phyllis, you were smiling there for a while, and I know you're a VP membership for a couple of clubs and you do a very good job. Give us your take on how you handle when you see guests, because you're a member of an in-person club and an online club. So tell me how you're managing your role.
Well, it certainly has evolved since the first time I was a VP membership, and it keeps getting better. And after tonight, after just hearing what Pat said about the in-person debriefing, it's going to evolve again. I do follow up with my guests after their first meeting. A lot of times it's just by email though. And since the last time I heard Pat talk, probably a year ago, I've been doing my very best to meet with the guest before our first meeting. And I've now set aside about half an hour before my online meetings. And I'll tell any guests that if a meeting's at 7, I'll be there at 6:30. Please drop on in anytime after 6:30 and we can chat privately before the meeting starts. And I'm happy to stay after the meeting also, but at least I can talk to them. And that's when I do find out why they've come and what their background is and follow up with them. So many people definitely they know what they want. Here's an example. One of my last guests, I get confused. I have to keep good notes because VP membership on 2 clubs, plus I respond to guest inquiries for the district and I go, okay, which one is this? What club did I tell you to go to, But I think this was for Island Excellence, Sydney Hurst. Is that right, Carlos? Yeah. Okay, so she just joined us. But here's her message. Hello, I'm interested in joining the Island Excellence Toastmasters Club. I'm wondering if there is room. Thank you so much. So right off the bat, I know she wants to join, right? And, out of courtesy, I want to make sure they come to one meeting and we hear them a little bit, or I get a chance to talk and to try to vet them a little bit, because I don't want a sourpuss to get in. First time, that's never been the case. I've had a past Toastmaster from another province, and I'm thinking, okay, they have great difficulties driving to a meeting. They have great difficulties going to a Zoom meeting. So I don't know that this person would be the best for our club, but they wanted an in-person meeting anyway. So thankfully for that, I referred them to another club. But yes, it's really evolved. I'm picturing the comparison that they're coming to a gym, to join a fitness gym. And what happens when you go to a gym? You pay your membership right up front, or if you're lucky, they give you 1 free workout or a 1-week free membership. But that's just to give you a taste. And then you're expected to join. You pay monthly or you pay annually. So I look at it that way. I'm going to invite them after first, and I tell them when I meet them before the meeting, I said, I'll talk to you after the meeting or following the meeting. And if you like what you saw, then I'll help you with your application form and tell you how to get started. And then, like Shaquille said, we'll provide assistance for the first several months or as long as needed to get you familiar with everything up until you're able to operate on your own. And yes, it's much easier now than before. I like not having someone who expects 3 meetings. And I don't expect that. I want them to join after the first meeting, and I think they think it's fair, and they even appreciate being able to come to one meeting as a guest. And so most times it's not hard to convert. And I think it'll be easier if I do an in-person debrief and tell them more. Sometimes there's almost too many guests a smaller club, how can you orient them all and provide them all with good mentorship while you're trying to maintain an active, healthy meeting? It can be a lot of work, right? But I know they all appreciate it. So it might be a matter where you do things in a group. Okay, instead of orienting one-on-one, you get all 3 new members and orient them at the same time. Karen, so that's what I've been doing, and high conversion rate, pretty high conversion rate.
You're doing right. You're doing great. All we hear is, oh, this is the new member. This is not a guest anymore.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we want to hear. I think what everybody has talked about, and I think Pat has said it and you have said it, but there's just an acronym. Fortune is in the follow-up. Fortune, any good salesperson, and again, I'm just talking about sales because sales is something I know really well. I did exceptionally well in sales because I followed up, and I continued to follow up until I got a no. And sometimes I got a no, not right now. So I said, great, I'll contact you in. So I never gave up till it was a no. And it was a no, not a not right now. And I think that's the most important thing, that people give up sometimes because like, oh, they didn't come back again. Well, call them back and say, I noticed you didn't come. You said you were going to come and attend the next meeting and you weren't, you wanted another kick at the cat, and we're more than willing to give you that one more try. What happened? I know life, life comes up, are you going to be at our next meeting? I'd love to see you there. And again, you just don't stop. And that's the thing is, if you pregame like you're doing, like you're talking about, you're setting the stage right away for them. You get them in the meeting and they get that quality meeting with somebody and that follow through. And then again, it's not that hard sell in the meeting, with the ability to talk to them afterwards. And Phyllis, you're very successful at that, in how you do that, because I've seen that myself in our club. And I know that that's a really good opportunity to have that conversation that is a little more in depth, right? Because it's very surface, I think, when you're more in the club.
I tell them to meet me online for a brief chat. Well, that brief chat is usually 20 minutes, but just a friendly conversation.
Yeah. One of the things that I find more challenging when we have hybrid or online clubs than when we were just in person is that having somebody to sit beside them and coach them through the meeting. That was just such a regular practice in our club. And I noticed that it's fallen beside the way as we've been online and now we're hybrid, that it's much more difficult to do, because it's you've got a chat box going on or something like that, which is very distracting when it's already a jam-packed meeting and flying through things. So I find that I haven't got a good substitute for that.
I think the other thing though is that, especially when you have a guest, is like that you're supposed to explain your role. So if you explain your role correctly every time and people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and explaining their role, the guest gets the benefit of that. And then there's less to chat about because they understand a little bit more about the meeting. And I think that falls to the wayside a lot with members, then there's no guests there. And I think it needs to just be a consistent thing. If you do it, it's a habit, then you'll just continue to do it.
Yeah, I agree. It does reduce some of the confusion and need for explanation, particularly if you have, I think it's challenging if you have newer members doing it and they're nervous about getting the basics done. But I agree that if you have an experienced Toastmaster and they're steady on their feet, to keep adding that explanation. Yeah.
I know that one of the things that I was afforded with my mentor was they'd say, there's a script. Go use the script until you know more about it. Use the script, and you can even read it if you need to. And that made me a lot more comfortable as well. And I think that makes other people that are nervous. And that's something you can always tell people to, like, look, I didn't know everything. And I didn't know my first role was a timer. So my mentor helped me. And I had a script. So I said, this is what I said. And, from now I don't have to do that, but
And oftentimes it sounds really wooden the first few times you do it. But I think too, that there is, we get a lot of clues at the end of the meeting when we do ask our guests. And if we ask the right questions, like leading questions, like, did you see how you might be able to benefit from joining a club? And if we listen to when they answer our questions, and even if you say, what did you think of our meeting? Oftentimes they're going to say, I would love to come back next week. Well, that's our in, is it not, to go ahead and close that sale? Because if they want to come back next week, why don't you just go ahead and get them to join now? Well, we can get you a member application. And like, why wait? Because if they're coming back next week, and oftentimes they say they'll come back and they don't come back. Now, is our vice president of membership following up with them? Are they doing the debrief after the meeting? And if that piece is missing, then maybe they don't come back the next week. So it sounds to me like I'm hearing everybody say that there's a lot of value
Mhm.
in doing the debrief and also listening to the language of what the member is saying when we give them the opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting.
Which I want to caution everybody to use those words. How did you like the meeting? I actually don't like that saying at all.
Mhm.
What did you see in the meeting that you talked about that would benefit you, or how did you, it's not about how you like the meeting. What did you like about the meeting, but not how did the meeting go? I think there's ways where people
Yeah.
say things where you're leaving it open for interpretation for them, and they will tell you sometimes. So be
Sometimes
careful
they
how you ask
evaluate
that
you. Yeah.
question.
You have to be careful not
I've
to
had that.
let
Yeah.
them evaluate us, because I've heard the
That's
occasional
happened. a lot.
guest
Yeah.
go on and on and on, and you're like, okay, how do you
I
cut them
just
off?
wanted to- in one sentence, can you tell us how you think Toastmasters will benefit you?
Yeah.
great way
I
to go
like
about
the
it.
question. Did you learn anything from our meeting?
There you go.
Angela Barris, she's a Toastmaster in the state of Washington, but she's Canadian, and she's one of these, I don't know, some kind of a personnel or lifestyle coach. But she told me once last year, she said, when we ask a guest, how did you like the meeting? We're inviting them to give us a compliment, and we want them to praise our meeting. And that's not the time and place to ask a guest, right? So I prefer, did you learn anything from the meeting, or do you have any takeaways, or did you see anything in the meeting that might help you grow or improve on the goals that you have? Something like that. But
I like the takeaway. That's a good one.
yeah.
Pat, do you have anything to add to that?
If it was 4 hours earlier, she would.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was.
I'm highly functioning at 3:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I do think it's important to ask the correct question, just as in any circumstance. And I've been in those circumstances where we ended up getting a full evaluation of the meeting from a guest, and you go, wow. I think the part that was in my brain when we were having that conversation was because of the comment I think Phyllis made about getting the application to them, or maybe Suzanne, I'm not sure. But that's one of the things that, because we're hybrid, that as soon as there's a guest, even if I'm, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I wasn't at the meeting and I found out there was a guest, I got their email address and I sent them an application and invited them back again and said, just for your information, if you'd like to file an application for membership in the club, here's the paperwork, because we've got it filled out, pre-populated with the money. And we often don't have those money conversations when you're talking to them at the beginning or when you're debriefing the meeting. And so the application form is an opportunity for them to read what their costs are going to be. And I think that that's a valid part. We have a fair number of students that come to our club, and so that's a consideration. So that's the one thing that I think is that I would add. Yeah.
I have to, go ahead.
Just
Phyllis.
one quick one is the Toastmaster of the meeting, when the meeting is ending and you've just had your guest give their comments, whatever they might be. And if it's positive and they say they want to come back next week, well, that would be a time, I think, where you can actually say, okay, well, I want to introduce you to Phyllis Nielsen. She's our Vice President of Membership. And Phyllis will talk to you about joining Toastmasters and how to go about that.
And can you put your email in the chat so that we can follow up with you?
I was just leading into that when you said that, Phyllis, is that, okay, so how do you have that question? How do you propose that? Like a lot of clubs I find, if you ask 10 of the members in the club, what are the dues starting in February till October, and they couldn't answer that question. So there's a certain
Mhm.
amount of education that has to happen within the membership that they all need to be able to talk to that guest and be able to tell them on the money what it's going to cost them. And then what is some of the
Mhm.
language that we want to say to our guests? You know, like the sales pitch, that pitch of, you know, comparing, you know, a Dale Carnegie to this or any other education program. How do we sell them on the benefits of this organization and get them to understand that this is a world-class organization and that, you know, this
Mhm.
is the time for you to join now. Like let's talk about some of the wording that we can use to kind of do that final pitch for them, because sales pitching is not easy for a lot of people, but being able to find the right kind of words, because we have all different kinds of people that we're dealing with. Some are extroverts, some are introverts, some are shy. How do we have that conversation? Who'd like to
I'll do
answer
it, sure.
that? Oh,
I actually say, look, this is probably one of the most inexpensive personal growth programs I've ever had the opportunity to be exposed to. I've been to DeMartini, where it's $1,800 for a weekend. And I don't have to pay that here. And I get mentorship and I get exposure to an international organization. I paid a small fee up front, but what that fee allowed me to do as a Toastmaster is it got me into the Toastmasters website and exposed me to the world. There are world-class videos in there. There's opportunities to research and support for us through our education program. It is an amazing website and you dive deep into it. We don't use it enough as Toastmasters. That's what I'll always say. So really, you become a Toastmaster for life with that small contribution towards that. And the rest of it is to support the club in making sure we have, you know, the lights on and a room to go to. We've got the projection equipment if you've got it. We've got snacks, whatever it is that we've got, so that we can function as a club, because we all know that it costs money to be able to do something. And that's just the reality. But it's relatively inexpensive, but I just break it down.
Mhm.
So I break it down into pieces. I don't go, it's this much money. I go, it's this much money for this, it's this much money for this, but overall it's this, but break that down over 6 months. Here's what it looks like. It's how you sell a trailer. How do you sell a trailer at $60,000? You don't say, hey, it's $60,000. You go, it's $229 biweekly. Well, that sounds cheap. So, right? It's just how you sell the numbers. And I think, Karen, you were talking about the club members knowing how to sell that. I think a lot of people don't know how to. So I think the important thing is to always redirect and say, hey, you know what? I don't talk money, but I know our VPN membership is so good at explaining this to you. I just know that I benefit so much from what I've been able to do in Toastmasters. And I consider it, you know, low cost for what I get. I can't, it's the benefit is so extreme for me, and I can speak to that personally, that I can't say enough about it. And then you just pass it on to the VP of membership or somebody that can speak well to it. And I think it's not about the money that you want the members to talk about.
No.
It's about the benefit, and then pass them over, feed them over.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
hearing that it's making sure your members know how to
Mm.
pass that off. Pat, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things that I do when I talk to people that are interested in going to corporations and they're talking about Toastmasters, and that I say, if you're not comfortable talking about money, don't go, send somebody else, because you've got to talk about money. And if you're bumbling and fumbling, they're going, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost me? And they're scared, and they're going, you obviously don't believe in the value. So for me, a conversation about money is a conversation that you have to have with yourself first, and you have to be in that space where you know the value. And so I agree that not everybody can or should be having that money conversation. You have to have the right information, and you have to be comfortable talking about money and know what you're asking is of great value. Small price for great value. And when you
100%.
believe that, then asking people for money, for me to ask people for money for Toastmasters is like trying to, you know, like, oh, it's not even tough, because the life-changing things that happen in Toastmasters,
Don't drink a Starbucks one day in the week and you pay for your Toastmasters.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
often the context
Yeah.
I use.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, at my Club Island Excellence, we've decided to just charge an annual dues. So I tell them it's $150 a year.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, what is that? $12 a month or $12.50 a month? Yeah.
yeah,
When I first joined Toastmasters in 2000, the club that I joined, they told me that that was, that this was what it cost. And so I said, oh, geez, well, I don't have that kind of money. Oh, well, you can pay it over 3 months. So I paid it over 3 months, and I did that for years, not realizing. I mean, I still, even after 5 years of being a member, I still didn't realize that they were semi-annual dues. I always thought they were annual dues. And then one day they started doing this semi-annual dues thing. And I'm like, well, I never got that one in my first 5 years. I had no idea. So I think when we train them to think, like, what is a 1 year membership? I mean, you buy an annual membership at a gym, like we talked about earlier, and you don't think anything of it. You get a week to try it out and test out the waters, and then you join. And some people choose to pay month to month, and but if that's not an option, you pay the dues. I'm curious, Carlos, you've been awfully quiet, and that's I'm curious what you might have to add to the conversation.
Thank you. I guess, and what we do in some clubs in which we try to sell the exactly same message, the same way we all communicate. So I try to have that the secretary, the president, the VP of education, the treasurer, everybody speaks the same language. So the guest, the potential member feels that everybody commands the same language. Second, it's necessary for us as a club to understand that in 20 minutes, the information that we are going to project is very little. So in that regard, we set a meeting with the prospect. But as sellers, as I like the word that Susanna's used, we need to love our product. I love the product, right? I love the product, and I know that we need to sell a quality. And then in our meeting, or in my meeting with the prospect, I was checking, and I have mentored 4 people in this last year, so not bad for me. And my message goes like, this is the only organization I belong to. So I think that it's a very powerful message. Second, I go with the educational side, and then I open my platform and I just guide them through the platform. I go to membership, why Toastmasters? So I take probably 30 or 45 minutes showing them very slowly what we have here in Toastmasters. And I never speak about cost. I call them investment. This is an investment on myself. I don't know if you can get into this, but this is what I invest. And I tell you, look at this. Look at the magazine that every member receives every month. Look at the training sessions. Look at all the wide variety. Look at the people you're going to meet. And I sell the quality people. And when I talk about people, I talk about my core values. I guess that my speech goes from everything, but mostly about the people and the core values. If people are not reacting positively to become members here, when I speak about the core values, I think that I will not try anymore. It's not about money, it's about core values. Why? Because we can get members and the next semester they're out. But it's not only because of them. I think we need to be responsible having quality meetings. Education really matters in Toastmasters. That is my speech. I never talk about cost, I talk about investment. If you are not able to invest on yourself, think about that.
Thank you. I heard
like
that
that.
loud and clear. It's an investment in self, and I think that that's got to be part of that language that we speak to our guests, is that this is the best investment you'll ever make in yourself. Final closing comments, Suzanne.
I think if we just start back to the beginning, we start with when we have that first contact with the guest, making sure it's a positive experience. Like Phyllis said, you know, if we can pre-game them, we'll call it beforehand, then we can get them ready for the meeting. We make sure that their introduction to the meeting is pleasant and that we put on a quality meeting. And then we make sure that we ask the right questions. Fortune is in the follow-up. I mean, if we don't follow up with these people, we have missed opportunities. They're going to go somewhere else where somebody's going to ask them, would you like to join our club? And that's just simple as it is. I think that when we open ourselves up, and I think one of the other things I think would be extremely important for our club members, all of us, is to have an elevator's pitch. All of us should have an elevator pitch. What has Toastmasters done for us, and why do we think it's important for others? And that's as simple as I think it is for people to not have to necessarily talk about money, but this is why I joined Toastmasters. This is what I've got out of it. And if everybody speaks that language, that higher law language, it makes it so much easier to convert somebody to a member. So much easier, because it's a pleasant place to be then.
Thanks, Suzanne. And Pat, your final comments, please.
I would say after Suzanne's introduction part and also the statement of having an excellent meeting, let's assume that that's happening. Then I think the next thing to keep in mind is that we have to be curious. We always have to be in the mindset of curiosity. What is this person looking for? Who is this person? Are they a good fit? Can we meet their needs? So I think if we stay curious and interested in that person, that they will also feel welcomed, and that they'll feel that, as Carlos said, that they can invest their time and their money with us, and that we will help them benefit from that investment of time and money. So stay curious about them, be interested in them, and usually then they get interested in you.
Thank you, Pat. I took notes, and these are the key things that I heard over and over again. What you just said, Pat, of being curious, and that when they do show up at our meetings, they've done their research, they're a hot lead. We have to sell them on the features, the benefits, and then do the close. We have to have quality meetings, and fortune is in the follow-up. And remember to tell them about the investment in self. Have I missed anything? Anybody have anything else to add quickly?
All about building trust.
Building trust. There we go.
All about building trust.
Building trust. Yeah. Okay. I think we've got some pretty awesome tips to be able to share on YouTube, and I'm going to make sure that we take this recording and get it posted so that people can see that, for those who weren't able to make it tonight. We are at 7:59. I want to do a special thank you to Pat Johnson for getting up in the middle of the night. I owe you, my dear.
I'll collect
so much.
I know you will. And I want to thank Suzanne and Phyllis, because both of you guys have been around for a while and have been selling guests our package for many years, and thank you for Shaquille and Carlos for your comments and everything. This has been a great session tonight, and I thank everybody for coming. I'm going to do a formal close to this. I'll stop the recording, and we can